I was 88 years old when my children asked me to pack a small bag. Not because I was sick, not because I had nowhere to go, but because, as my eldest son said, without even looking at me, "Mom, it's just easier this way." That was the moment I understood something most parents refuse to admit. You can spend your entire life raising children and still end up completely alone. And if you're watching this thinking that could never happen to me, I used to think that too. I wasn't always this slow, this quiet woman sitting in a small room with borrowed furniture. There was a time when my house was full of noise, full of people, full of purpose. I raised 3 children in that house, 2 sons and a daughter. I remember school mornings like they were yesterday. Burnt toast, missing shoes, someone always yelling that they were late. I remember sewing costumes for school plays, sitting up all night wrapping Christmas presents, cutting corners so they never had to feel what it meant to go without. Their father passed away when I was 69, a heart attack, sudden. One day he was sitting at the kitchen table asking for more coffee, and the next day the chair stayed empty. After that, everything changed, not all at once. No, that's not how these things happen. It happens quietly, in ways you don't notice until it's too late. At first, my children started helping. "Mom, you shouldn't be handling bills alone." "Mom, let me take care of the paperwork." "Mom, just sign here. It'll make things easier." And I trusted them. Of course I did. They were my children. I didn't read every document. I didn't question every decision. Because when you've spent decades taking care of someone, you don't expect to have to protect yourself from them. The house was paid off. Completely. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Every wall had a memory. Every scratch, every stain meant something. But slowly, conversations started changing. "Mom, this house is too big for you." "Mom, it's not safe anymore." "Mom, you could fall, I guess, and no one would know." They didn't say it all at once. They said it over months, sometimes gently, sometimes with frustration, until one day, it didn't sound like concern anymore. It sounded like a decision that had already been made. The paperwork came not long after. "Just a formality," my daughter said. "It'll make things simpler later." I remember holding the pen. I remember hesitating, not because I didn't trust them, but because something inside me felt off. A quiet feeling I couldn't explain. I asked, "What exactly is this for?" And my son sighed, like I was being difficult. "It's just to transfer things so we can manage everything properly, Mom. You don't need to worry about it." So I signed, because I didn't want to be a burden, because I didn't want to be the difficult old mother, because I thought they were doing what was best for me. A few months later, they stopped asking and started informing. "The house is going on the market. We already spoke to a buyer. It's a good deal, Mom. A good deal." That's what they call the place where I raised my children, where I buried my husband, where I lived most of my life. I didn't fight them. I wish I could tell you I did. I wish I could say I stood up and refused. But the truth is, by then, I didn't even know if I had the right anymore. Everything was already in their names. Every paper, every decision, every signature I didn't question. It had all added up, and I didn't realize it until I had nothing left to stand on. The morning they came to get me, I thought we were going out. I wore a nice blouse. the blue one, the one I used to wear on birthdays. I even brushed my hair twice, just in case there would be pictures. They didn't bring flowers. They didn't bring a cake. They didn't even sit down. My eldest son stood by the door and said, "Mom, pack a small bag, just essentials." I laughed a little. I actually smiled. I thought, maybe they planned something, a lunch, a surprise, something normal, something loving. The drive was quiet. I tried to make conversation, asked about their lives, their work. The grandchildren, short answers, one-word replies, no eye contact. That's when the feeling came back, that same quiet feeling. Something isn't right. When the car stopped, I looked out the window, and that's when I saw it. Not a restaurant, not a hotel, not a place you take your mother on her birthday. It was a care facility, plain building, neutral colors, a sign outside that said everything without saying anything. I turned to my son, and for the first time that day, my voice didn't sound like my own. "What is this?" He didn't look at me, not once. "It's better for you here, Mom." Better. That word again, always better. Never asked, only decided. They walked me inside like they were running an errand, quick, efficient, uncomfortable. Forms were already prepared. My bag was handed to someone else, and just like that, my life was no longer mine. They didn't stay, not even for 5 minutes. No hug. No, I love you. No, we'll visit soon. Just footsteps, walking away faster than they came. And I stood there, at 88 years old, holding onto a chair that wasn't mine, in a place I never chose, realizing something I wish I had understood much earlier in life. Sometimes, the people you gave everything to are the same ones who take the last thing you have. And that wasn't even the hardest part. The hardest part came after. The first night was the longest night of my life. Not because of the bed, not because of the room, but because of the silence. It wasn't the kind of silence I was used to, the peaceful kind that comes after a long day. This one felt heavy, like something had been taken from me, and the air itself knew it. My room was small, a bed, a chair, a narrow window that looked out onto a parking lot. No familiar smells, no photographs, no pieces of a life I recognized, just a space waiting for someone. And now that someone was me. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, still wearing the same clothes, still holding on to my purse. Like if I let go of it, I might lose the last part of myself that felt real. I kept thinking, they'll come back. Maybe they forgot something. Maybe they'll realize what they've done. Maybe this was just a mistake. But deep down, I knew better. The next morning, I woke up disoriented. For a moment, I thought I was still at home. I even reached for the lamp that used to sit beside my bed. But my hand hit an empty table. And just like that, reality came back. Days started blending together. Breakfast at the same time. Lunch at the same table. Dinner that tasted the same, no matter what it was supposed to be. People around me, but no one I knew. Some residents talked to themselves. Some stared at the walls. Some waited by the door. Every afternoon, hoping someone would come. I told myself I wouldn't become like that. I told myself I would stay strong, that I wouldn't sit there waiting, that I wouldn't let them see me, broken. But strength is a strange thing when you're alone. It doesn't disappear all at once. It fades, quietly. Weekends were the hardest. That's when families came. You could always tell. The halls would fill with voices, laughter, children running around, flowers being carried into rooms. I would sit by the window, pretending I was just watching the weather. But really, I was watching people being remembered. Mother's Day came. I didn't expect much. Maybe a call, a message, something small, something to remind me that I still existed in their lives. I sat by the phone most of the morning, then the afternoon, then evening, nothing, not even a missed call. That was the day something inside me shifted. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity. I stopped waiting after that, stopped making excuses for them, stopped telling myself they were busy or stressed, or that they'd come around because the truth was simple. If they wanted to be there, they would be. A few days later, I was sitting outside in the courtyard. It was one of the few places that didn't feel completely closed in. There was a bench near a small patch of grass, nothing special, but at least it felt open. That's where I met him. He wasn't a doctor, wasn't staff, just a visitor. Early 30s maybe, simple clothes, tired eyes, the kind of person you don't notice at first, until you do. He sat down on the other end of the bench, not too close, not too far. For a few minutes we didn't speak. Then he glanced over and said, "Are you okay?" Such a simple question. But it had been a long time since anyone asked me that, and actually meant it. I almost said yes, out of habit, out of politeness, out of pride. But instead, I shook my head. That was the first real conversation I'd had in weeks. Not about medications, not about schedules, just a normal conversation. He told me he came there twice a week, visited different residents. Some didn't have family. Some had been forgotten. He said it like it was normal, like it was something people just accepted. After that, he started stopping by more often, not every day, but enough that I began to notice. Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Saturday, he'd bring coffee, real coffee, not the watered-down kind they served inside. And he'd sit with me, ask about my life, listen, without interrupting. One afternoon he brought someone with him, a woman, his wife, kind face, soft voice. She greeted me like we had known each other for years, not out of obligation, but with warmth. And then, a few visits later, they brought their son, small boy, maybe 6 years old, quiet at first, holding on to his father's hand. But I noticed something, the way he walked, or tried to. His steps weren't steady. He leaned slightly, like his body wasn't fully cooperating with him. Every few steps he would pause, adjust, try again. I watched him carefully, not in a judging way, just concerned. You learn to notice these things when you've lived long enough. Later, when the boy was distracted, I asked gently, "Is he okay?" The father hesitated, just for a second, but I saw it, that look, the one people try to hide when something hurts too much to explain easily. "He was born with a condition in his legs," he said quietly. "They've been trying to manage it, but it's getting worse." His wife looked down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "There's a surgery," she added. "It could help him walk normally." There was a pause, the kind that says more than words. "But?" I asked. They exchanged a glance. Then he said, "It's expensive." Not dramatically, not like a movie, just a simple, honest truth, the kind many people live with every day. I looked at that little boy again, the way he tried, the way he didn't complain, the way he kept going, even when it was hard. And for a moment, I thought about my own children, healthy, strong, given everything, and still, they walked away from me. Then I looked back at this family. They had so little, but somehow They still had something my children didn't. They had heart. And that's when something inside me changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but clearly. For the first time since I had been left there, I didn't feel completely empty. I felt certain, because I realized something that no one tells you. Family isn't always the people who raised you or the people you raised. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everyone else walks away. And what I decided to do next was something my children never expected. I didn't make the decision that day, and I didn't say anything right away, because at my age, you learn not to act on emotion alone. You sit with things, you think, you replay moments in your head over and over again until the truth becomes impossible to ignore. For days I watched them, that young family, the father always tired but present, the mother carrying more worry than she ever spoke about, and that little boy trying every single time he stood up. They never asked me for anything, not once. They didn't hint, they didn't complain. They just showed up, sat with me, talked to me, treated me like I still mattered, and that's what made it different. That's what made it real. A week later, I asked him a simple question. "Do you have a lawyer?" He looked surprised. "Not really," he said. "Why?" I nodded slowly. "Would you be willing to come with me to speak to one?" He hesitated, not because he didn't trust me, but because he didn't understand. And honestly, I didn't expect him to. You see, there were still a few things my children didn't take from me, not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't think they mattered. After my husband passed, I had kept a small savings account in my own name. Nothing extravagant, no hidden fortune, just money I had set aside quietly over the years, for emergencies, for security, for peace of mind. And then there was the house, not the one they sold, another one, smaller, older, a property my husband and I had bought decades ago as an investment. It had been rented out for years, then eventually forgotten. Not legally forgotten, just overlooked, because it wasn't worth much at the time. And my children, they were always focused on bigger numbers, bigger assets, bigger gains. But time has a way of changing value, and that small property is sitting quietly all those years, had grown into something more, not millions, not anything that would make headlines, but enough to matter, enough to change something real. The process wasn't fast. It took weeks, meetings, paperwork, conversations that were careful, deliberate. I made sure everything was clear, legal, documented, no confusion, no room for anyone to twist the truth later. And most importantly, I made sure I was of sound mind every step of the way. When I told him what I wanted to do, he refused immediately. "No," he said, "I can't take that from you." His wife shook her head too. "That's yours," she said softly. "You need it." I looked at them, and for a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in a very long time. Respect, not for the money, but for me. "My children already took what they wanted," I said calmly. "This is what I choose to do with what's left." There was silence, heavy, emotional silence. "I'm not giving you charity," I continued. "I'm making a decision." I told them the truth, not the version I used to comfort myself, the real truth. I spent my whole life giving to people who expected it, and I ignored the people who deserved it. That was the first time I said it out loud, and it didn't break me, it freed me. The surgery was scheduled a few months later, not overnight, not magically, just step by step, the way real life works. I wasn't there in the operating room, of course, but I was there when they came back. The first time I saw that little boy walk without struggling, I didn't cry. I couldn't. It felt bigger than that. He didn't run immediately. He just walked. Slow, careful steps, but steady, balanced, free. And then he looked at me, smiled, and said something I wasn't prepared for. "Look what I can do." No one had said those words to me in years, not with joy, not with pride. And in that moment, I felt something return to me, something I thought I had lost forever. Not youth, not strength, but purpose. A few weeks later, they came back again, this time with a different kind of conversation. "We've been thinking," the father said. "We don't want you to stay there anymore." I looked at him carefully, not rushing to believe, not rushing to hope. "We found a place," his wife added. "Not big, but comfortable." He nodded. "There's a room for you." A room, not a facility, not a bed assigned to me, a place made for me. I didn't answer right away because at my age, you don't just move because someone offers. You move because it feels right. And this time, it did. Leaving that place didn't feel dramatic. No speeches, no confrontations, just a quiet exit, the way I entered. But this time, I wasn't being taken somewhere. I was choosing where to go. My children found out eventually. Of course they did. People talk, information spreads. At first, they called. After months of silence, then came the questions, then the accusations. "Why didn't you tell us? What did you do? Who are these people?" And finally, the one question that revealed everything. Where did the money go? Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Where are you living?" Not, "Do you need anything?" Just that. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel hurt hearing it. I felt certain. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't defend myself, because I had already spent a lifetime trying to be understood by people who never really listened. Today, I am 89 years old. I wake up in a home where someone actually notices if I'm quiet, where coffee is made the way I like it, where laughter exists without effort. That little boy runs now, not perfectly, but freely. And sometimes he grabs my hand and pulls me along like I still have time left to catch up. My children, I don't know much about their lives anymore. And for the first time, that doesn't feel like a loss. Because here's what 88 years has finally taught me. You can give people everything and still mean nothing to them. And you can give someone almost nothing and mean everything. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Don't confuse obligation with love. Don't mistake proximity for loyalty. And don't assume blood will protect you from betrayal, because sometimes the people who stay are the ones who never had to, and those are the ones worth holding on to. That's my story, and if you're still here listening, thank you. It means more than you think.